Hello YouTube, it is I, the Amazing Kitty, to start this with another video, and I thought I would install Windows 98 onto this laptop. Now the thing is, this is a standard, this is 98 first edition. So, since this laptop has recovery media that supports 98, I thought we would just go into that and run recovery media. Now, the reason why I decided to do this is because I recently installed a new hard drive, and so I wanted an actual mechanical drive that's more period correct. And I thought a more period correct operating system, even though 95 would be period correct for one of these, for this particular laptop, I felt like Windows 98 first edition might make a bit more sense, considering when this laptop came out. So I thought, why not? Why not actually do that right now and show this process off again with one of these laptops. I've done a video on this before with the Gateway restoration media. And since I wanted to do this with the restoration media, because I do have a floppy disk for doing the 98 install, but this isn't really that different from doing it from the 98 install, but install operating system. F1, Windows 98, F1, format and install. You're about to format your hard drive. F1 to continue. So we're going to format. I've already archived this. This is, and mind you, this is the Windows 98 first edition that I'm going to be installing onto this laptop, because, bro, this is gonna be lit. Actually installing a version of Windows that you legally own. The only other version of Windows that I legally own is Windows 95 OSR 2. So I at least have first edition. I at least legally, if not like that matters at all. Not like that matters at all. It really doesn't. It really doesn't. So it's just doing the formatting. And so what we'll do with this, so the reason for doing this, McAfee, so yeah, we'll install all that. We'll install all that. McAfee virus scan, that's appropriate. So we can press spacebar and toggle applications. LapLink Professional, why not? I really need to get another battery for this, because I got the gaping hole. But try this out. Press enter. And it doesn't even allow me to select drivers to be installed. But I thought Windows 98 would be an interesting one to throw on here. I mean, this should allow me to select drivers. Make sure that there is no disk before in the CD-ROM. There you go. That's what we're going to install. Yeah, you can see the model number. I think I've seen this copy of 998 first edition on like Internet Archive so many times. And this is a retail copy, which is why I'm doing it through the factory setup, which is really nice. Yeah, we're going to after rebooting, let's see if it'll reboot. So the hard drive is Fujitsu. Ah, yes. 98. Now containing your operating system must be placed in the CD-ROM. So there you go. It's inserted the disk. F1 to continue. So the reason for just installing 98 first edition on here is because that's practically the only version that I have. And besides, I probably wouldn't mind running first edition on this laptop since it originally would have come with that anyway. And I feel like first edition would make the most sense on this laptop anyway. I have second edition running on a Toshiba Satellite Pro 445 CDT, and that thing is actually what I primarily use as my DOS gaming PC anyway. I've thought about putting MS-DOS 622 on it, and then installing Windows 2000 on there. And whatnot. I wanted to show this process off. And so now we're installing the the good old Win98 install. Possibly one of the best installers on ever made. Certainly everyone remembers this one more than they do 95. I remember 95 and NT and nuts and to some degree NT4. So I'll just type in my key, and then we'll continue on with this. And there we go, we got the key going, and it's installing. And so now And so now our disk is checking the space. And that's kind of the cool thing. If you got this laptop initially with Windows 95 in mind, and later on bought it like a copy of Windows 98, you could just buy a copy of 98, and you, of course, you're left with one of the best operating systems for this laptop, period. Because this laptop has 3 USB ports. There are 2 right there. And then there's one on the dock. And the fact that this laptop has the PCMCIA built right into it. It has PCMCIA slots built into the dock as well. So you can really expand upon a lot of stuff that would have been normally done. That would have been normally something done on something like this. Yeah, I just thought about showing the 98 install part of it, plus the dock, just showing off the dock for the laptop, because I'm pretty sure someone probably wanted to see that, and we'll show that off once it gets done. Show that off when this gets done. I don't know if I want to not show this installation process. This is actually kind of neat. And I think if I want to keep these hard drives in healthy working order, I might not pull these laptops out constantly using them. Maybe every so often pulling them out. Like I'll show you the Toshiba Satellite Pro 445 CDT at some point, and like show you what I like about this laptop, but also show you what I don't like about it. There are some things like with regard to running Windows 98 on this laptop that I don't like. Some things just don't work right with 98. And I just thought it would be pretty cool to just show this quick video of the installation process of 98 from factory OEM software disk. From the factory, this is of course not the original disk. Thanks to the effort, thanks to someone trying to look for the original disk for this laptop, that inspired me to actually legitly go look for the actual disk for this laptop, because I really wanted to do a video on the factory installation process for this laptop and talk about that. I guess this is another video on factory installation, but just showing it from the Windows 98 side of things, plugged into the dock, what it does, the various aspects of this thing. So this is going to be a lot of fun. And so what you're going to see here is, yeah, it's year 2000 compliant. This is the new millennium. And I've already done like I've already ran like Windows 2000 on this thing. And honestly, I'd rather run 98 on this thing than 2000, because even despite 98 and Windows 98's incompatibility issues with this particular model of Gateway Solo laptop, it works. It's not completely incompatible. This thing was designed with Windows 95 in mind. So, even though you could also order these with 98, I would probably still much prefer to put 95 on these things, because even though 98 was designed to take advantage of the MMX instructions, and that's as really, Windows 98 was not designed for 486s in mind. It was designed for like Pentium MMX. Like any person says, well, the bare minimum for Windows 98 was 486. Well, that's what it could theoretically do. But no one in their right mind would ever run this operating system on a 486. You'd be running this at best, at worst, on a Pentium MMX. Because that's what Microsoft's real minimum requirements were for both Windows 95 and Windows 98. Like the way they intended you to run Windows 95 was with the Windows Desktop update, which Windows 98 comes with. Like, yeah, 95 didn't initially have that, but the fact that Microsoft included that as an update with Windows 98, included that with Windows 95, and later OEM release, OSR version 2.5, they intended for 95 to be expanded. Or rather 9X in general to be expanded upon. So, and they intended for the Windows experience to be on the newfangled enhanced interface. But a lot of people argue that this is not the way God intended us to experience Windows 9X. I would argue that's the way God intended, the way Microsoft intended, and the way they wanted you to experience. They wanted you to have all the enhanced features, despite what the unpopular opinions of like various people say. I frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn what others say, because Windows 98 was meant to be experienced with the Windows Desktop update. It was meant to be experienced with that in mind. Or rather 9X in general. And this was the way Microsoft intended Windows 9X to be, which was a really great interface. 98, despite all the detractors who are Netscape fanboys, that People gave Microsoft a lot of flack back in the 90s. Like, people living today could not possibly think that it could have gotten worse. That we would later on wish that we could go back to those much simpler times when corporations weren't greedy assholes. When, well, we're not going to really bring up all that stuff. Let's just say before corporations, but then they were acted righteous and enlightened. But then again, corporations have always done that for a long time, so that's not really a new development. And the whole thing of calling yourself, I'm aware. You're hardly aware. Because if you were aware, you'd be silent. And corporations pretending to be righteous and enlightened, to just say it like that, that's the whole thing about, that's the thing. These, people wanted people pretty much wanting to, these people wanting to butt their nose in your business, get involved, make their bed with government, big corpo and big government, and little g, and let's just call them Antichrist. Let's just call them the Antichrist. Because that's what the Antichrist is. The Antichrist was Nero, the Emperor of Rome. And his number was the number of and his number was 666, the number of excess. Corporations getting a government plus corporations trying to get into your personal life, wanting to not just monetize your life, but also spy on you, see if you're spouting dissenting information, call you a pedophile if you're against government encroachment. Oh yeah, the people on the Epstein flight list are going to tell me that I'm a pedophile for being not so much anti-government, but being extremely critical of government. Because to be anti-government is to be anti-authority. And I'm not an anti-authority. Because not all authority is authoritarian. In fact, a big part of right-wing philosophy regarding authoritarianism, from my perspective anyway, is that from my perspective, the way I see the right wing is that I see the right wing as wanting correct authority. And that's probably also true with left wingers. The problem is that we have this conceptualization of what we think right authority looks like, and it's these differing opinions that become a problem, knowing what the actual truth is. And so we squabble and complain. So we just get into squabbles over politics, and we get into these squabbles over nonsense. That's the problem. People don't ever really think to realize this. This is kind of a problem. So, and this requires a dialogue. But nobody wants to have a dialogue nowadays because all that people want to do is get all divisive, fall for divide and conquer tactics, and fall for all this divisive horse hockey. Let's put it that way because I don't really want to use cussing all the time. You take me to be Razor Fist. Like, no matter how much he cuts down his profanity, still cusses a lot more than he should. Which is like 1%. You should only at least be cussing like about 1%. That's as much as you should be doing so. And you should also, and if at work and especially at work, you should be cussing 0%. I mean, what kind of job does Razor Fist do? Political discourse. That's especially the kind of job that you most definitely shouldn't be cussing at all in. Yet he portrays himself as a friend of the right wing. Yet, if you ask any right winger, any truthful, honest right winger will disavow that kind of behavior because that is not what right wing values are. Right wing values do not avow the kind of gratuitous use of profanity. Especially in his line of work where he's commenting on politics from the perspective of the right. And how did we get on that subject? Oh yeah, we were talking about corporations and profanity use. I probably shouldn't be saying things. I probably shouldn't be talking about that crap in a video like this. But, you get onto those sort of tangents when you get into, when you get into this sort of history of, this sort of history, and you get into a topic that most people would not want to discuss. So we're going to install well, this is not a 720p panel. This is not a 720. This is not a 1024, but a 768 panel. So it's installed some weird drivers. So this is what the Windows 98 install looks like. Yeah, that's a window you haven't seen you rarely see that window in modern Windows, but it is still in modern Windows. So it is something really neat to see that. So now it's going to install. Yeah. So it's going to install our software. So this is actually one of the cool things about installing Windows 98 on this machine, is that you can at least get to see the process. It's not really that different from that from doing Windows 95. It's really it's really what I would prefer to do is just install this. And I may have to copy some DOS games over here and test the DOS compatibility out on it. But this is going to install all the applications that would have come with this laptop. And I thought this process would be a lot of fun. There's also a Windows Update Restored that we could actually run on here. But I'm thinking about showing that off in the next video, doing the part 2 of this setup, because I really wanted to show this process off. And so it's going to install DirectX 6.1, which is good to have. I mean, this laptop, I believe, is DirectX 5 compliant. But DirectX 6 is good to have. I will probably end up installing the Direct Media patch onto Windows as well. And I'm glad I got to show this thing. I'm glad I got to show that off once, because I've always wanted to show. I always wanted to show the Gateway Factory setup, just because the Gateway Factory setup is really good. And so you can see it is installing all our applications. And this should actually be, so I will actually have to do the next setup, the next part of the setup for Windows 98 on this thing, which is probably install network drivers. They haven't been done yet. It's installing Adobe Acrobat. That's cool. So this is going to install eSmart. And so this is kind of cool, just showing off the setup process for 98. I'm going to show you guys how to get onto the internet with this thing. Because I don't think I've ever shown off Windows 98 First Edition. It's kind of an interesting version of 98 to be using. Update 98, the setup. So this will just install some updates here and there. And I'm glad I have like a proper 98, a proper gateway recovery disk that I can use. Not some ISO. Yeah, this recovery disk I had to actually use Magic ISO to make. The Magic ISO not to make, but Magic ISO to burn to a burn disk to CDR. But see, I got my speakers plugged into it. Those. And I wonder if it's going to allow me to install drivers. See, 98 is like the one operating system I don't have to worry about the sound drivers being a huge problem, because I've got drivers designed for like 95, 98. So it's going to install eSmart. Yeah, this is kind of a neat thing to show off. Cool. And I believe that is something of I believe that is hard drive software. And I believe LapLink might have to do with the dock. Yeah, I much prefer Windows 98 second edition over first edition. But if I was ever to install 98 on here, I would probably go and install 98, 95 on here. Then I would upgrade that to Windows 98 second edition. Because first edition, let me tell you, this was not a great release of Windows when it first came out. Subsequent releases, they fixed a lot of the issues in it, and even then it had issues. So it is kind of neat showing the 9X setup. And this will install McAfee antivirus, which is appropriate to have an antivirus that comes with your laptop, even though it's going to be woefully out of date. It might be useful for catching some stuff. McAfee installs McAfee. I mean, this was also this similar setup to like that of a Gateway Essential ESS 450, which is why I wanted to do this laptop setup and have a bit of fun with this. This time show it with a Windows 98 retail disk, which is really neat that it'll work with any Windows 98 installed disk. So you don't even need the factory OEM disk for 98. You can just pull any retail disk and it'll work with that. So it's really neat. So this should be installing McAfee, and then it'll install Netscape Communicator. And I think I'm going to leave the software like Netscape Communicator on version 4.06. And so now it's going to install that and this. So this is going to be really cool. So I think we already have our drivers installed. So now we're going to install 90 our software. So yay. And then we'll do our so you can see that this is doing all this setup. There we go, so it should be getting ready to do all this stuff. So I just kind of skipped a little bit of the process. This is setting up registry. So it's now registering. So now we got Netscape on here. So it's just installing all that stuff. So now we're in the so now Windows 98 should be set up on here. And I'll probably later on do a video with this laptop, so I might actually be doing some other stuff on here. It has a and now I've got like 98 on this thing, which is bonkers because I don't run 98 on this laptop usually. I run like 95 on this thing because 95 is dope. So now we've got network. Now we have a network. Oh yeah, I gotta put in. Pick Cheerios. So now we're so that's our setup. And it's all done. And we'll in the next video that we'll next time we do, we'll actually be showing off Windows Update Restored. Let's show the Neo Magic Graph. Network adapters. This has a 3COM on here. And so that's our sound. Until next time, peace out, everyone. So, this is what's so great about Windows.